Thank you very much, Melvin. Appreciate that. Just a couple of notes I want to point out. It's been so recent that Greg Saunders retired for a second time just last week that we haven't even told everybody yet. But the chair for the Joint Standardization Board for ESB, Expeditionary Shelters and Basin Equipment, is now Michael Hafey, in place of Greg Saunders as our director. In fact, the ESB JSB is the only Joint Standardization Board that DSPO chairs. We were asked to do that many years ago, and Greg maintained doing that. And as far as I know, we'll continue to do that with Michael Hafey. If you couldn't tell, I mean, Joint Standardization Boards pretty much began as a technical working group that specialized in something, whether it's shelters or generators or mobile power or fuses, which we'll talk about here in just a second. And these working groups were recognized and chartered. They've been chartered by the Defense Standardization Executive as a Joint Standardization Board. And that carries with that some clout across the standardization community, if you will. And our standardization executive, Defense Standardization Executive, was our keynote speaker this morning, Ms. Stephanie Posel. And so it's an important thing that we work with our JSBs. There's only 6 of them. We have 4 today presenting, but to keep them up to date, and keep them engaged, and help them when we can. And if they solve their issue or their problem, then we shut them down. You know, they're no longer a JSB. If it's an ongoing thing, then they'll remain. All right. So the next up, Joint Standardization Board for fuses. And these are fuses with a Z, not an S. Fuses with an S being the kind of thing that protect a circuit. These are fuses with a Z that blow things up. So it's pretty cool stuff. I don't want to give away too much here, but the Fuze Initiation System JSB is actually fulfilled by the Fuze Engineering Standardization Working Group. And it's a very diverse JSB, multi-service. You know, at a minimum, Joint Standardization Boards are multi-service. And at best, they're multinational. And Fuses and the next one, RSAG, after this, are both very multinational, and you'll hear more about that in just a minute. But their big focus is on interoperability, as all of our JSBs are, and it's actually been a word we've heard a lot already today. Interoperability, it's a big word. It's not as big as standardization. It's a subset of standardization, but it's very important in what we do. And also the Fuses JSB focuses a lot on safety, and they've been around for a long time. And just a real quick intro, they're going to have 2 speakers, Miss Sandy Picinic and Mr. Anthony DiGiacomo. And they're both from the Army Fuze Management Office out of Picinic Arsenal, New Jersey. Ms. Picinic is the Executive Secretary on the Army Fuze Safety Review Board. And Mr. DiGiacomo is has the oversight responsibilities for ammunition fusing for tanks and hand grenades. So without further ado, I'll pass it to them. Please take it away, Ms. Picinic.
Thank you, Lloyd. Just mic check. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask to advance the slide to slide number 1. I'm not presenting here, but on the cover slide, you can see. So good day, everyone. My name is Sandy Picinic. I'm joined with Mr. Tony DiGiacomo. We're both from the Army Fuze Management Office. We'll talk about fusion initiation systems, our success with standards. So if I can ask to advance to slide number 2. Slide number 2. We've identified the following topics for our agenda today. In the interest of time, I'll ask to advance to slide number 3. So on slide number 3, we see here Defense Standardization Program. The Joint Standardization Board includes requirements for the munitions, fuse, and initiation systems. And that's fulfilled by the DoD Fuze Engineering Standardization Working Group, also known as FESWIG. FESWIG is chartered with really the following purpose: to maintain both a DoD-wide and NATO working arrangement for the development and refinement of standards for munitions fusing and initiation systems, which is necessary to facilitate safe handling of ammunition operations. With that, I'll ask to advance to slide number 4. So on slide number 4, we have the FESWIC overview. We see here that the Defense Standardization Executive, that it was formally chartered back in 2003, and it formally was chartered under Joint Standardization Board in 2006. But the history on FESWIC actually dates back before that because of the critical need in terms of developing standards for commodities such as fuses. It was well in operation for more than 50 years. But the key takeaway on this chart is to know that the FESWIC membership, right, is well diverse. It's chaired by the Army Fuse Management Office, which is our office, and it's an office that handles everything fuses, right? So it's chaired by AFMO, and it's well diverse. It includes the memberships that include Executive Secretary, DoD, Tri-Service Fuse members. We include our partners from national labs, as well as our industry partners, academia, and any other subject matter expert to participate as part of these meetings. Again, FESWIC is there for both U.S. documents and NATO document support for fuse and initiation systems. Our involvement, we interact with industry as well as with the independent fuse safety review boards. And we do meet twice a year, along with any ad hoc session that helps. These ad hoc sessions are as needed basis in terms of developing our current standards. With that, I'll ask to advance to slide number 5, please. On slide number 5, it's just meant to be a pictorial reference of what fuses are, and fuses are meant to function the ammunition's warhead, but its primary roles are safety and arming. And fuses can be either separate items of the munition as depicted on the left-hand picture, versus they can be integral within the munition, which is seen by the picture on the lower right-hand side, where it's integral and hidden inside the munition. On the next slide, slide 6, again, fuse, F-U-Z-E, is not the same as an F-U-S-E. And an F-U-S-E is the common everyday term that provides electrical safety device to prevent overcurrent, whereas F-U-Z is an official military term dated back all the way back to 1927. And really, a fuse is the most safety critical part of the munition, right? It really helps to facilitate safe conventional ammunition and explosive handling use, such that it ensures safety during the life cycle, during storage, transportation, and most importantly, handling for our operators. So with that, I'll ask to advance to slide number 7. Since we spoke about what a fuse system is, want to highlight what is an initiation system. And so similar to what a fuse does for an ammunition's warhead is what an initiation system does for the munitions propulsion system. And because they're in the same category of providing safety, these two entities, fuse and initiation, were lumped together to form this Joint Standardization Board for standardization. So with that, I'll ask to advance to slide number 8. And with slide number 8, we see here Army Fuse Management Office, AFMO. Our mission is an oversight management of all non-nuclear Army fusing throughout the life cycle. And what this slide is representing, we have 3 fundamental core areas that our mission, that supports our direct mission for everything fuses within the Army. On the left side, you'll see the column depicting Fuze munition industrial base. And that really is used as a need to ensure industry acquisition and our S&C communities are addressing current and future weapon needs, systems, and issues. Pretty much the enablers to help advance fusing and initiation systems to develop and ensure new emerging technologies. This effort, industrial base, also helps to support any sort of industrial base obsolescence and ensuring we have sustainment in terms of the industrial base capability. So these enablers, these needs are direct input to the Joint Standardization Board activities. As we see here within the chart, the Joint Standardization activities is the key fundamental meaning point between our activities under AFMO. So we take in the needs from what's coming from the Fuze industrial base, and we start incorporating as part of our standards. The other exciting element within what Army Fuze Management Office chairs is that we do chair and manage the Army Fuze Safety Review Board, which is an independent technical design safety review authority assessing new munitions as part of the acquisition development cycle. So this independent board is then used as an actual source of execution to test our Fuze standards that we've developed and ensure that compliance is adhered to. And it's also seen as a way to improve and help upon improvement of our standards. So those inputs on how those designs are being executed then help to feed and help for us to look back and reassess our current Fuze standards and really answer the tough question: have we defined the standards clear enough? Is there an opportunity for an improvement? And we've seen that because of these three different elements of what Army Fuze Management Office adheres to. We see these are very integral into harmonizing both industrial needs, current standardizations, and where we find and execute that, where the rubber meets the road, if you will, as part of the two safety boards and reviewing in terms of, do the new Fuze designs meet the intended standards. With that, I'll ask to advance to slide number 9. And on slide number 9, you will see that as part of the Fuze initiation systems, there are two elements. The FESWIG is the Fuze and Initiation System Standardization Authority for DoD elements, and we play an integral role with NATO Action Committee 326 Subgroup A, which is the Fuze and Initiation Systems Standardization Authority for NATO efforts. The key takeaway here is that both bodies are also chaired by Army Fuze Management Office, and Mr. DiGiacomo will talk more about the NATO efforts coming up. If I can ask to advance to slide number 10. Slide number 10 provides the status of DoD FESWIG standards, and this is another key takeaway chart in terms of our success with our standards. And so what you can see here is really the list of current standards and our accomplishments, not just in publishing new documents, as well as our continuous revision of publishing revisions. And those new revisions and updates are in direct advancement of Fuze technologies for applications, specifically in support of DoD modernization priorities. So we've seen these standards, new requirements, as they relate to new applications that meet DoD modernization efforts, include hypersonic applications, unmanned aerial vehicle applications and development of different power sources and initiation strategies. So it's been a very exciting time. We also have new standards in development coming shortly, as well as NATO standards to ensure that US DoD needs are also addressed and well understood. So the takeaway here is that our Fuze and initiation system standards are well positioned to support DoD modernization and interoperability priorities. With that, I'll ask to advance to slide number 11. And at this time, I'll hand it over to Mr. Tony DiGiacomo to address the NATO portion of our presentation.
Thank you, Sandy. Am I coming through?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Hello, everyone. As Sandy said, with the FESWIG and NATO, we are very closely aligned. I am the chairman of the subgroup A initiation systems team under the NATO AC326. And if we'll go to the next slide, please, since we're only on the phone and are not controlling the screens. So the next slide shows the NATO structure under which we live. So we're under the North Atlantic Council, which covers the Conference of National Armaments Directors, known as the CNAD. And under that is the AC 326, Action Committee 326. Now, there are other committees under the CNAD, but I've streamlined this organization chart just to show our group. But there are other groups under the CNAD for your information. So under the AC 326, there are 3 subgroups. And originally, about 7 years ago, there were about 6. But as everyone else is doing, trying to cut costs and streamline and become more efficient, NATO decided that we should have only 3 subgroups. And for the 6 groups to be joined into 3, it worked for most of the groups, but it didn't work too well for us. We were put together on the subgroup A with the energetic materials group. And the energetic materials group, they're mainly chemists who work on formulations for energetic materials, explosives, and so on. So their expertise and ours, which is more based on hardware and electronics and software, they didn't join too well. But we agreed amongst ourselves that we were going to run the group with 2 separate meetings. And as such, I chair the meeting for the Fuze and initiation systems. Next slide, please. Again, here, a bit of overlap, but I just explained how the subgroup A functions. We do meet twice a year, normally in the spring and the fall. This year, I've had to cancel both meetings due to the COVID, but we've been trying to work through emails and telecons, and we've been able to, as you see later, at least accomplish some things this year. Next slide, please. So just a brief introduction to the NATO documents that we work on. On the left side, you see that they're covering documents. In the past, the STANAG had much more information. It had some technical information, and then it referred to an AP, which had more detailed information. But when NATO reorganized and the NSO has restructured the documents so that the STANAG is, in effect, just a cover letter now, and most of the details and technical information now reside under the Allied standards. Our standards in our group are called AOPs, Allied Ordnance Publications. And then, as was mentioned, I believe in some other presentation, we have standards related documents which contain other guidelines and other information that helps to, that may help clarify what's in the AOPs or Allied standards. Next slide, please. So under the CAS-G, or the Ammunition Safety Group, there are the objectives of the safety group is to improve interoperability, as we've heard. That's very important. When nations have to conduct field operations, you want to be familiar with the equipment they use, the terms they use, and so on. And we want to make sure also that the munitions, and now this is above just the Fuze, it's within the ammunition safety group, so it includes the Fuze, the munition, some of the logistics that go together with it, and the energetics as well. We want to produce safe munitions so that the soldiers and the warfighters handling these munitions can feel that they are protected, because these munitions and fuses have been designed to common standards, have been tested very exhaustively to make sure that they're safe, so that they don't have to worry if they drop something that it's going to blow up. We also give guidance to munition designers through our standards, and as well as get involved, as I mentioned, with logisticians, so that we try to cover the full spectrum of munitions, from the design, testing, and transportation, and so on. Next slide, please. So recently, even though we've had to cancel this year's meetings, we have been able to accomplish some completions of standards. As you can see from this list, we were able to promulgate standards that we've been working on in the past few months. We had a new standard, 4593, just to highlight one for a second. This standard has been in the works for a while, and it was written with the help of the Joint Ballistic Working Group. Joint Ballistic Working Group is a group made up of 5 nations who are all part of Nato, but they concentrate on artillery. And this standard contains the requirements for inductive setting of guided projectiles, large projectiles. So this is a new standard for us, and we were very happy to finally complete this and have it promulgated. But you can see here the list of what we've promulgated, what is currently in update with France is a custodian of the 4187, which is the Fuze, one of our most important standards, which is the Fuze design and safety standard. That's going through an update cycle. And our standards with NATO are supposed to be reviewed every 5 years to make sure that they're up to date, that they include new technologies, they include any clarifications that come up as lessons learned, because as Sandy said, when project teams come before the boards, they present their design and their compliance matrix to our standards, and then there's discussions of what this means and what that means. So we have to go through an update cycle, and we keep improving our standards. Next slide, please. And this is kind of a snapshot or an overview of how our NATO fuses and our U.S. FESWIG, Fuze-related standards, how they are related and how they are how one relates to the other. The important thing here is that the implementing documents for us, for example, take the first one, the Stan Act 4187. We have brought that to when we wrote Middle Standard 1316, which existed, has been in existence for a long time. We brought that to NATO when we first joined NATO, which must have been decades ago, before my time, and we offered it to NATO as a starting document to write the NATO document, the NATO version of the Fuze safety design. And so what happens over time is that these two documents are very much the same, but there are differences because of some language issues, the translation. We might have to change some terms in order to facilitate the translation. And there are some, for example, some energetics that the U.S. uses that we've qualified and are very familiar with, that we list in 1316 that NATO does not. So in order to simplify the implementation, we still use Middle Standard 1316 as the implementation document for the NATO version. And the same goes with all the other documents. There are some documents which have no U.S. complement. You see around the middle there that there's 4369 and 4547 and so on. Those have no equivalent U.S. documents, and so we use the NATO documents directly. All the other documents are listed here, and these are what we work on a continuous rotating basis and trying to keep them updated and improved as each cycle goes through. So that's the story with the NATO and the U.S. And next slide, please. So in summary, or the takeaways here is that FESWIG was chartered under the JSB and is the U.S. authority on Fuze and initiation systems. We have members from the Air Force, Navy, and Army who participate, along with other members of national labs, as Sandy said earlier. We promote, the standards promote interchangeability and interoperability. And they promote not only within the U.S., but also between NATO nations, with NATO nations. And our standards are well positioned to support the modernization priorities of the DoD. So that's the end of our presentation, and I'll turn it over to our host and see if there's any questions. Thank you.